Right now, somewhere in an open pit mine, a machine the length of a city bus and heavier than 150 fully loaded pickup trucks is pushing enough material in a single pass to fill a residential swimming pool. The operator sits in a pressurized cab roughly 14 feet off the ground. The blade does not nudge the earth. It moves it. This is the Komatsu D575A, the largest production bulldozer ever built, and when Komatsu released it, the intention was not subtle. The machine existed to challenge the Caterpillar D11, the bulldozer that had defined the top of the earth-moving market for years. The D575A weighed approximately 336,000 pounds in its superdozer configuration. The D11 weighed around 229,000 pounds. The difference between those two numbers is itself larger than most mid-range bulldozers in active production today. The bigger machine was real. It worked. It found customers. And it never replaced the machine it was designed to surpass. That gap between what the engineering promised and what the market delivered is the entire story. To understand how that happened, it helps to understand what the top end of the bulldozer market actually looks like and why it matters. Machines above 100 tons operating weight occupy a narrow segment. The buyers are surface mining operations, large dam construction projects, and major infrastructure cuts, where moving enormous volumes of material in the shortest possible time is the only thing that matters. Individual purchase decisions in this segment routinely reach into the tens of millions of dollars before maintenance contracts enter the calculation. A single Caterpillar D11 lists in the range of $2 million or more, depending on configuration, and major mining operations do not buy one. They buy fleets. At that scale, the purchase price is only the beginning of the conversation. Caterpillar's position at the top of this segment did not emerge quickly and was not accidental. The D11 lineage traces to the D10, which Caterpillar introduced in 1977 in direct response to the scale demands of surface mining during the energy expansion of that decade. The D10 established that there was a genuine commercial market for machines of that size. The D11 arrived in 1986 as its successor, refining the platform and extending Caterpillar's presence in the segment. By the time Komatsu introduced the D575A in 1991, Caterpillar had been the dominant name in large dozer applications for roughly 15 years. Komatsu was not a marginal competitor attempting something outside its capabilities. The Japanese manufacturer had been expanding aggressively into international markets through the 1970s and 1980s, building genuine credibility across mid-range earth-moving equipment. The large dozer segment represented both a prestige target and a real commercial opportunity, and Komatsu pursued it with the engineering investment that kind of ambition requires. A production bulldozer, as distinct from a one-off prototype, has to be manufacturable in series, serviceable in the field, and economically viable for an owner to operate across a working life that in mining applications can extend to 20,000 hours or more. Komatsu built a machine that met all of those requirements. The D575A produced approximately 1,150 horsepower, compared to the D11's range of roughly 850 to 935 horsepower across its variants. Blade capacity reached approximately 90 to 95 cubic yards per pass. Ground pressure, which measures how a machine's weight distributes across its track contact area with the ground, and which matters enormously in soft or unstable conditions, was managed through track geometry that did not scale linearly from smaller equipment. The engineering was serious. The machine was capable. On every specification comparison that a procurement table could display, the Komatsu was larger. The reveal is not about the specifications. The specification table shows horsepower, blade capacity, and operating weight. It does not show what surrounds a machine across 20,000 hours of operation, and that surrounding infrastructure is what actually determines outcomes in this market. Caterpillar's dealer network by 1991 represented decades of compounding investment. Parts warehousing positioned within practical service range of operating mines. Field technicians trained specifically on Caterpillar systems, familiar with their failure modes, and capable of diagnosing problems without extended delays. Operator certification programs built around Caterpillar controls, ergonomics, and handling characteristics, which meant that an experienced D11 operator could move between machines and between sites without retraining. A mining operation that had built its fleet around Caterpillar equipment had absorbed all of those costs already. The institutional knowledge was present. The parts inventory was stocked. The technicians were on call. Introducing a D575A into that environment did not simply add one machine. It added a parallel ecosystem, a separate parts inventory, because Komatsu and Caterpillar components do not interchange. A separate training pathway, because the handling characteristics and control systems of the two machines differ in ways that matter at the scale of 20,000 hours. A separate service relationship, which in the early 1990s meant engaging a Komatsu dealer network that was still maturing in regions where Caterpillar had operated for decades. None of this made the D575A a poor machine. It made the D575A an expensive commitment beyond the purchase price. And in a market where procurement decisions are made by people who calculate cost per operating hour across the full machine life, that distinction carried weight. First-hand accounts from operators who ran early D575A units in North American operations describe service infrastructure as improving significantly through the mid-1990s. The sound profile of the machine at full load was described in operator accounts as something felt through the seat structure as much as heard through the cab, a physical vibration that distinguished the D575A from anything else on a bench. Track adjustment at that scale is not a task one technician completes in a standard maintenance window. The sheer mass of the components involved turns routine service into a planned crew activity with specialized tooling. Accessing certain systems required ground preparation that smaller machines did not. The machine imposed its own terms on the people running it, and learning those terms took time. No comprehensive independent analysis comparing total cost of ownership between the D575A and the D11 across equivalent operating conditions appears to be publicly available, and no single authoritative head-to-head study has been located in preparing this script. Trade publications from the 1990s carried operator surveys and field comparisons, but methodology varied significantly between reports. The picture that emerges is assembled from partial sources and should be read accordingly. What those partial sources suggest, consistently, is that operations which adopted the D575A found the machine capable of delivering its specified performance. What they also suggest is that the cost of building and sustaining the support ecosystem around an unfamiliar platform was real, calculable, and significant. That distinction shaped the commercial outcome in ways the specification sheet never anticipated. The D575A found a market. That is the first thing to establish without ambiguity. Komatsu sold units. Surface mining operations in Australia, South America, and North America adopted the machine, and in high-intensity applications, its scale advantages were genuine. The Bowen Basin coal mining region in Queensland, Australia, among the highest utilization mining environments in the world by the early 1990s, saw early adoption of ultra-class equipment across multiple categories, and the D575A was part of that wave. In those operations, the blade capacity and cycle time advantages over the D11 translated into measurable productivity differences on the right material and the right bench geometry. But a machine finding a market and a machine replacing its competitor are two different outcomes. Even within operations that ran D575A units, the Cat D11 frequently remained present in the fleet. Not because the Komatsu underperformed, because mixed fleets generate their own complications, and transitioning entirely required a commitment that most operations, having already invested in Caterpillar infrastructure, were not prepared to make. The economics of that transition did not resolve in the D575A's favor often enough to shift the segment. Caterpillar, for its part, did not wait. The D11N and later D11T variants introduced across the 1990s and 2000s delivered incremental improvements in fuel efficiency, operator ergonomics, and powertrain management. None of these were dramatic engineering departures. They did not need to be. The incumbent's advantage in this market was not primarily about having the best machine at any single moment. It was about reducing the performance argument for switching enough that buyers with existing Caterpillar infrastructure could justify staying. That is a more achievable goal than outperforming a challenger on a specification table, and Caterpillar pursued it with consistency. The broader pattern here extends beyond these two machines in this specific decade. The heavy equipment industry at the top end operates on a logic that procurement officers understand and specification tables obscure. Purchase price is a fraction of total ownership cost at 20,000 hours. Parts availability, technician familiarity, operator training, and unplanned downtime measured in lost production hours per shift dominate the actual calculation. A machine with superior specifications can lose that calculation if its support ecosystem cannot match a competitor's maturity. The better machine, by the metrics that appear in a brochure, does not automatically become the dominant machine in the market. Dominance belongs to the machine whose total operating proposition is most defensible across the full working life. 4 things determined how this story ended, and none of them were visible on the day the D575A rolled off the line. First, installed infrastructure compounds over time in ways that a new market entrant cannot replicate at launch. The depth of Caterpillar's dealer network, parts ecosystem, and operator training programs represented 15 years of accumulated investment that no engineering achievement could immediately offset. Second, total cost of ownership at 20,000 operating hours is a fundamentally different calculation than purchase price at delivery. The D575A's advantages in blade capacity and raw power were real and documentable. Their value against the cost of building a parallel support ecosystem around an unfamiliar platform was less straightforward. And in this market, less straightforward means fewer conversions. Third, the incumbent's response matters as much as the challenger's entry. Caterpillar did not stand still. Successive D11 variants reduced the performance gap without requiring buyers to change platforms, which is a more durable competitive response than matching a competitor's horsepower figure. Fourth, finding a market and replacing a competitor are not the same achievement. The D75A accomplished the first. The second required a level of ecosystem displacement that the machine's engineering, however capable, could not accomplish on its own. Right now, somewhere in a surface mine, a D575A is pushing material that would bury a building. The operator is 14 feet off the ground. The blade is moving 90 cubic yards in a single pass. The machine is doing exactly what it was built to do. Somewhere nearby, in the same operation or the one adjacent to it, a Cat D11 is doing the same thing. The Komatsu D575A remains the largest production bulldozer ever built. It did not replace the machine it was designed to surpass. The biggest machine in the category has held that distinction for more than 3 decades, and the D11 has held its market position for just as long. That is not a statement about engineering. It is a statement about how markets at this scale actually work, and why the machine that wins on paper and the machine that wins in practice are not always the same machine.